Good morning, Thaji Dias. It's wonderful for me to see you for many reasons. One is you're one of the, as far as I know, most talented and skillful artists from the young generation that we have at the moment. Secondly, you're very committed to social causes also. Young as you are, you don't stay apart from what's happening currently in our country. Thirdly, you are also uh, perhaps one of the latest artists from one of the best traditions of dance we have in Sri Lanka. And you're also committed to making sure that that skill, that that artistry is passed down to the generations to come. So for all these many reasons, I'm honored that you have come to my program today. And I will ask you, you come within a program called Resistance, right? And the reason I will take your interview within that framework is this picture that I'm sharing on screen. And I was at this protest, which was part of the Gota Gogama protest. And before we started the parade from Independence to Galle Face, you danced. It was a very powerful dance. All of us were around you, and you danced just on the grass there with the drummers and all that. And I thought this was very symbolic of what we were trying to say. Resistance against what we thought was, we still think is an unfair regime. So that's why I was thinking I speak to very senior people normally, but you're one of the youngest to have come in this program. And one of the reasons I am doing it is that you are very much part of the movement that's going around. In that Aragale, I saw your aunt Upeka, I saw your cousin Heshma. They were drumming, they were dancing as if, and your whole family practically is part of what's going on in Sri Lanka. So Taji, before I get there, could I ask you to just give us a brief introduction of who you are, starting with your very famous, the master guru, Chitrasena, who we have unfortunately lost now, but the equally wonderful grandmother Vajira, who's still with us and an inspiration to many dancers and artists. Could we have a brief introduction, Taji? And you can share the screen anytime you want, showing pictures of what you have come from, where you have come from. We'll start from there and I'll lead you through, basically asking you the question, why you dance. Okay, but when you come there, let's go through the history and I'll ask you quietly why you think you need to dance and why you dance as protest and what dance means to you. Because as a young person, hearing you might inspire so many other artists to come. Okay, Thaji, now over to you.
Yeah. So, firstly, thank you so much for having me today. It's such an honor, and I've been, knowing you for so long in different ways. Like we've connected before in so many different ways through, I think Pradeep's concert also, and so I think that's the first time I kind of interacted with you, and it's such an honor to be here for me also today. And I think for me, in terms of my family, and it's like for me, I was born into the dance because I come from a family of dance. So my grandparents, Chitrasena and Vajira, then my aunts Upeka and Angelika, my mother again who's a dancer, Janaki, and my cousins Heshma, and then my sister Umi. So all of them are involved in the dance. So I was kind of born into this whole atmosphere. So very kind of organically also I started dancing. So no one really forced me to kind of do those things, to follow this. So, and I never really wanted to do anything else also. I'll just kind of show a few pictures, I think, of my grandparents and um, yeah, it's just give me a second.
The Chitrasena we consider like what Martin Vikramasinghe was for literature. And a person who immediately put things so high that he became the yardstick from which everyone then thought of
Yes.
dance. And especially, if am I wrong if I say it, especially Candian dance, Taji? The
Yes,
Candian form
so
of dance?
actually, so he was one of the pioneers who brought the dance onto the stage, because our dance form is born from a village ritual, and he kind of saw the need for it to be resurrected or given a new lease of life. So I think when we're talking about resistance, even then, like my grandfather started as a form of resistance to the British rule and what came with the British rule. So in 1944, when he started his school, basically a lot of people were kind of, you know, accepting and taking in Western culture, and so like the jive and the cha-cha and all of this is becoming very popular. So his father, Sri Dias, was also a theatre actor and director of Shakespearean plays in Sri Lanka. So he actually headed the Tower Hall theatre at one point, and they produced a lot of plays. So my grandfather had that theatre background as well. So through that, but he was more interested in pursuing the dance. So then his father kind of told him, you have to go to the village and first learn our ritual dances, and then let's see how what you can do after that. So he went to the village, and then he learned the traditional Canadian dance form, and he lived with his gurus, and he realized that during that time there were no professional dancers, so everyone was the village, the gurus were doing it as a form of, like, the rituals were being performed as a form of healing, because there were no doctors and to get medicine. So they would do a shanti karma to heal and so on. So the dancers were looked as yakdesas. Yakdesas are like people who heal, and so, and these dance forms were also called like yaknatum, like the devil dancers, because they were healers. And so when, if someone was doing Candian dancing or any traditional dance form, they were called it was called yaknatum in those days. So
And if
and
you translate that, that will be like devil
yeah,
dance,
like a devil dance.
connected to
So
kind of a.
they kind of look down upon at these dancers and dance forms, like it was something, like it wasn't something that everyone wanted to do. It was like not cool to do that kind of dance
Maybe
form.
not
So
respectable as well, no? Which
yeah, so
again
yeah,
connected to
anyway,
caste.
because the caste system was also there during that time. So the dancers are like they're in a particular caste which is much low, very low. So they're not allowed to come into a house and so on, or sit at the same table with everyone. So my grandfather wanted to break that. So what he did was he learned this dance form, and then he kind of brought his teachers, his drummers to his home. They all ate at the same table. They sat together, and so he kind of gave them the respect that they actually deserve. And then he realized that all these ritual dancers were kind of dying slowly because of during the British rule, when all these different things were coming in, like medicines and all of this. So people were kind of going more towards those things, and he realized that the dance needed to be resurrected in some way. So that's when he thought, okay, the theater is where it should go. So, but for him, he kind of had no one. He was actually alone. So there was no one. There was no one to draw inspiration from. Again, he had to, when it came to theater and bringing our dance to the theater, he had to look at the West, because when it came to theater craft and all that, he had to draw from the West. So
So he
um,
brought something very informal within a formal structure. And
exactly,
for that,
exactly.
the inspiration was the West, because we did not
Yes.
have proscenium theaters or whatever, right?
Exactly. So
Traditionally.
he used to say, like, when they used to go outstation to perform, they had to perform at the town hall or something, which was actually a meeting hall. So like the stages were used for meetings, like they would keep tables and chairs and have meetings there, but it wasn't a place where you could perform. So they would get someone to make like a frame out of bamboo and then hang the curtains. And there was an incident where when the lights were being hung, the whole frame kind of collapsed. And so it was very difficult during that time to do something. And it was all very new. So, and he didn't know how to, our rituals are performed throughout the night, right? So it's really long. So he had to kind of make it shorter, because it's either 1 hour performance or 1.5 hours. So he had to figure out how to make it like these short segments.
But
Uh,
I have a question. When
yeah,
he did that, when he drew and tried to modify to suit a more modern kind of audience, did he get protest or resistance from the
exactly,
traditional artists?
exactly. Yes, he did. So from both sides. So the kind of Colombo elite who had kind of taken in this Western culture was looking down at him, like, oh, like, what is this dance form that you're doing? And then the traditional gurus were against him, because he was trying to bring it onto the stage, and they thought, yeah, he was trying to change it. So like he says in one of his interviews that, like, almost like prostituting the dance, he says. So he says that he was being basically hammered from all sides. He didn't have anyone's support, but he kind of did what he did in resistance.
And the
And
dancers were willing to run the risk of censor like that and still dance for him? The
yes,
dancers?
because they were also getting an opportunity, right, to
Yes.
perform. So I think later they also realized that the ritual is not something that has a long life. There's so much of practice and so much of like studying that you need to do. And now, like my generation, there are very few who do the ritual. Anyway, females don't are not a part of the ritual.
And
The
anyway, that's almost a dying art. No, Thaji, we hardly see Shanti Karma or Toil
exactly,
unless
exactly,
it's constructed, created in an artificial condition where the cultural ministry says, let's have this. It's no
exactly,
more
yes.
the organic healing kind of feeling that
Yeah, and
what is it.
it's also the Candian ritual is very less, but the Low Country there are some people who do it quite well. But so even my generation, there are very few who actually, very few males who actually have that time to invest in studying the whole ritual and performing it, because anyway financially they can't do it. So all the males have to work, do like a 9 to 5 desk job to find financially be stable, because performing in a ritual won't bring you
Taji,
that much.
when your grandfather started this, bringing a folk thing in onto the stage, did he have the money to do it? Did he need funding? How did he manage the
So
practicalities of it?
he actually didn't have anything, just the support of his father, because his mother was also against him, doing dance and all that. So his father supported him, but his father died, passed away very early in his career. Like even before he started, he was just like a student when his father passed away. So he really didn't have anyone to support him, and he says like when they first performed Karadiya and when they wanted to put it on stage, he didn't have money to do it, so he had to borrow like 3,000 rupees from his servant who works at home, like for him. So like he had to, and but he did have a few like really great admirers of his work who supported him with like how to do things. I the name of this person is not coming into my head right now, but he was very close to my grandfather and taught him a lot about the theater. Like he was a kind of scholar, and he was also like a professor, and he used to have this huge library which see I used to go to, and he had all these books on not just like just normal stuff, but dance and music. So see, I used to often go to this library and read a lot about theatre craft and
I would
about
be
dance.
very interested in his name, Thaji.
Yes,
Also, which
I
year is
highly
this, Thaji?
recommend.
Which year is this?
This is in
Around.
the 1940s.
So, is it before independence or after?
I think just after independence. No,
Okay.
but actually, my grandfather started his school before independence, so that was the time
And I can imagine the energy that was going around there, because there were many traditional artists trying to come into an identity.
Yes,
Because this was after years of being rejected, looked down
yeah,
upon, and in fiction it happened. Sadly, a
exactly,
lot of nationalistic thought also got into it. But
exactly.
I think, when Sarat Chandra was analyzing this time, there were many nationalistic things which were happening, not for the same reasons it happened later, for
Mm,
putting down another race, another ethnicity, but it happened because a sense of pride was needed. So, for example, Sarat Chandra, I think all the names also changed. Sarat Chandra
exactly.
was Ebert Bisilva. Was Chitrasena's name different?
It was Maurice Dias,
Exactly. So all the foreign sounding name, like even Amaradeva,
Ivamradeva, yeah, as my
Sarat
parents.
Chandra himself, and Chitrasena, the movement was to make us feel proud of our heritage. And then it made perfect sense within that context. But later we saw what it became. It was used to also now. One of the reasons we are all protesting is it was also used to put down other ethnicities. And that's a journey should not have taken, but did.
Yeah,
There is a danger, and people like, theorists like Fanon had said, the danger of nationalism, which makes sense at the beginning, is that it can be channeled to different things. So it was within this incredibly high energy
yes,
that was happening during our independence time. So maybe what the framework that Chitrasena was moving in was within that energy of trying to make us proud of what we have.
yeah. And he
That
always said like he wasn't doing it for himself. He was doing it for the art form, for the culture. And but people didn't see it that way. They always misunderstood him, and so he was kind of very frustrated at the start, and so. I think yeah, that was his frustration, and then people were kind of putting these leaflets out saying, he's trying to destroy the dance, and because he changed the costume. So after his I'll show you a picture now, because so after his tour to India, after he studied in India, so you can see he studied a Indian dance form called Kathakali, and he studied under this guru called Gopinath, who was also a guru who kind of changed the Kathakali form to suit the stage. So what Sia necessarily did was also very similar to what Guru Gopinath did, even changing the costume. So Sia says that, in like post-independence, or pre-independence, like when Sia started in 1944, 1945, he when he went outstation to perform the Canadian dance form with his drummer, and he was wearing the traditional West costume and dancing. He was hooted off stage because people thought it was like this very uncool thing to do. And then what he did was he wore this costume, like this different costume, and came and did the same dance form, and then he was accepted. So I don't know, it's kind of very
So
strange.
this happened, Thaji, in Colombo, outside Colombo.
No, this was outside of, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Kalutara.
So why would they? I mean, I can imagine that easily happening in Colombo. Why would people in Kalutara not respect the traditional kid?
Yeah, they, I don't know, they kind of, during that time, I think it was such that, people were starting to, like I said, accept this Western cultures. And I know even I would also think like in Colombo, yes, but place like Kalutara, but
Could it be because it's a Candian form that they did not like? Because they have
uh,
low country dance, right? Pahatarati.
yes, yes,
The
but
kids and everything is different.
yeah, but I don't think it was necessarily that. It was just you people are very you think people from like the outstations would also know about our art forms and what they are, but I don't think not everyone does. So unless you're actually like totally involved in it. So like even today, like when you go, we performed, we went and performed about a year, sorry, before COVID. I think it was in Horana, yeah, was it Horana? Yes. And some of the students, they were like, this dance form is so new to them. I think I can imagine nowadays, because what you get to see on TV and you don't get to see the rituals anymore much. And so the students are also like unaware of what these art forms are. And but you would think like now in an outstation school, like kids would actually know like what is candy and what is low country. And so it was quite surprising for me also. So yeah, my grandfather, has
Can
said
you put this in the timeline? When did he go to India? At the
it was
point of his
he
life?
first went to India in 1945.
After he started this project of getting traditional dance onto stage or before?
Yeah, so he had not started it yet. So he was just like he used to perform with Chandralekha, this JDA Pereira's wife, Chandralekha. So during that time,
Now, a little bit of history, Thaji. Can you give me a little bit of introduction about Chandralekha?
she's JDA Pereira's wife.
Mm-hmm.
JDA Pereira, who's
Thaji, you're stuck.
Started, I think, the University of
Okay, Thaji, you got stuck for a minute.
Yes.
Start with JDA Pereira again. Yeah.
Sorry, did I get stuck?
Yes.
Okay. So JDA Pereira, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, he is the one who started the University of Visual and Performing Arts. But it wasn't a university when it began.
Became a university very recently. In fact, one of the last ones to do so.
Yeah. So I think it was called Haywood at that time,
Yeah.
and it was just
Yeah.
So his wife Chandralekha was also a dancer, and she performed with my grandfather. This was after my grandfather. This was after the 40s, I think, like more towards the late 40s. But Sia learned the traditional dance forms in the early 40s, and then in 1945 is when he first went to India, to Shantiniketan, Rabindranath Tagore's Shantiniketan, and he was studying there. And then he came back, and that's when he started performing and realizing that, okay, this dance form needs a new lease of life, because after his experiences in India, He
He
kind
might
of,
have been exposed to Tagore's thinking, which is
yes,
good. Something that
exactly.
Tagore also did. You respect your own culture,
Yes.
even though the colonization would have made you also disrespect it.
Yeah.
Now it makes so much sense. Right. Just a quick question. Is Vajira now in Chitrasena's life at this point?
She comes, I'm not exactly sure when she comes to start like learning dancing from Sia, but I think more, but by 48 she was there, because in 1948 they did a performance for when, you know, we got independence. They did a performance called Pageant of Lanka. And I think all these dance troupes got sections from the history of Sri Lanka to perform. So my grandfather got the landing of Vijaya and Ravana. I think, yeah, so Ravana's role, and like Rama Sita and that. So I think Airangani Serasinghe was Sita and my grandfather was Ravana in that production. And my
Sarah Singh is a dancer. Let me just get the facts.
she learned dancing from my grandfather. She was one of the
Okay.
first students. Yes.
All right. I don't think that's generally known. And also, Thaji, when did your father make his own school? Now, he came from India. He was with
My grandfather. Yeah,
Chandrika
in 1944. He started the dance school in 1944.
after coming from India.
No, this was before he went to India.
Okay.
He,
Okay.
he started with a small group of people, like he had a few students. So actually, Ravi Bandhu, sir's father, Soma Bandhu Vidyapati, was one of his first students,
Right.
dance students. He came to learn dance, and then my grandfather saw that he was very talented in painting. So my grandfather had said, you know, why don't you try your hand at designing and costumes? And so that's how he kind of started designing costumes and sets for my grandfather. So my grandmother, I think, must have come in like in the 1946, 1947, and then she was a part of this group that performed at Pageant of Lanka. So she has told us that her first role was the deer in the Ravana's the deer. So that role she really cherishes. So she talks about it all the time. And I think Irangani Sarasinghe was much senior. She is much senior to her, so she was doing a much bigger role in the.
I wish that you had some photographs here.
Ah,
Because these are
I
icons.
did.
Yeah. We'll deal with that later. Maybe
Yeah,
for the English one. So, Sinhala one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
Okay. So then they put this. Where was the pageant of Lanka held? In
That was
Colombo?
at Independence Square. Before I think the
Outdoor.
Independence Square was built,
Yeah.
they put up like a stage there, and they had the performance. So my grandfather's father, Thaji Dias, and then there were a few others who were all involved in organizing the whole thing. So
Who were the other dancers, Taji? I'm just curious. If they
uh,
got parts of it,
I'm
they
not
very
quite
famous.
sure. I
So
think there were.
which means, Taji, there were famous people who are not heard of anymore, no?
Yeah, so
Died out.
the thing is, that the dance was there in the villages. So there were dance schools, little pockets of dance schools in the villages, like small ones that were starting. But see, there were no professional dancers as such who were doing it like as a profession on stage, or you know. So and I think, but Sia's school was one of the first dance schools that was established in Colombo. So yeah, there were other schools and other dancers and who have toured before Sia and all that, but they hadn't, you know, they weren't really known or as such, you know.
So when you say that, it strikes me even more strongly. What a fortunate turn of events that we had someone who took it down right to 2022, and
Exactly.
had descendants who cared enough to take it down. Because when you say Chitrasena was part of that pageant of Lanka, you realize there were so many others.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can't even trace it back,
yeah.
who they were. Okay, so this was on the day of independence, that festival they had at independence, that this was staged.
Yes, yes.
Lovely.
So
Okay. after that, he went around putting dance onto stage. That's
yes, so he was like just experimenting and trying to see how he could use the dancers, the ritual dancers, because obviously he didn't have a huge group of dancers, so he had to use the ritual dancers for stage purpose as well. So like to teach, he had to teach them stage discipline, and so even the ritual dancers were going through this change of getting used
But
to.
one thing would have been time, no, Taji, because time is so flexible in a local context. We had the whole night. It's
Yeah,
very, very casual. There was no, while as little I know of Western art, the time is, if you say 6 o'clock, it's 6 o'clock.
yes, yes.
And then we used to have, judgments about it. But I think everything was much more flexible
Yeah,
time-wise.
yeah, and all the dancers, and actually those days they used to. My mother has said that they used to write letters to the dancers to ask them to come for rehearsals, and they used to actually turn up, and we laugh about it because they say now we have WhatsApp and Viber and all these things, and we still can't get our group together for a rehearsal. And and most of the dancers lived at my grandfather's house in Kolpiti with him. So they used to
They
all.
had huge house like that.
Yes, yes, in Kolpiti,
Yes.
right next to Carnival. Now there's a huge food city, I think, there.
Yes.
But yeah, so
So your great grandfather would have been extremely wealthy, belonging to the wealthy class, not to
yeah,
have
yeah.
a house
So
there.
they were from this English speaking family background, and so they had, very, like, they were well educated and
Yeah.
all that. So, but I think my grandfather got this house when he started to learn dancing from, and when he slowly started his career from one of his patrons called EPA Fernando, who owned this company called Bogala Graphite.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's very famous. Mm.
yeah. So he kind of gave his ancestral home to my grandfather to start his school. So, and my grandfather worked out of that house for like 40 years or something. And so like all the artists used to kind of get together there, and artists like Ananda Samarakon, Sunil Shanta, Amaradeva, and Somabandhu. So they used to all kind of live there and even do their classes at the dance studio.
Haji,
And
that's a enormously influential list, no? That you just named
yeah,
all the people who became icons in our culture,
exactly.
right? And they were even
They
my mother.
started off at because nobody had a place, to work from. So my grandfather kind of got all of them to come to his place and just stay with him. And apparently his mother used to always cook, and there was food always on the table for anybody who came.
Yes.
And all these artists just kind of lived there. And during that time, some of the greatest creations were made, like Karadiya, Nalada Mayanti, Kinkini Kolama, all of Sia's ballets or dance dramas were done during that time when all these artists were living in that space. And Sia has even said that, when Anand Samarakon was staying at the dance school is when he had written the national anthem and the music for it. So it's a very kind of iconic historic place. And then suddenly my grandparents had to leave that space. They were kind of like asked to leave because EPA Fernando passed away, and then the land was sold to developers, and then because my grandfather couldn't afford to buy it during that time, so it was sold to some developer, and they were trying to put up some hotel there. So they brought down the whole house. They demolished the house. So it
In
was
any other country, Haji, can you imagine the museum it should have become?
exactly.
Right? The national anthem was created there, and the best art. And no, see, this is, yeah, it's another. neoliberal story that's being said alongside that. Let's not get there because it's painful all the time.
Yeah, so unfortunately, when I was born, they had already moved out of that house, so I have never seen that house. But my cousin Keshma has been there, and she can't ever stop talking about that place and the kind of energy and the atmosphere in that place, which we are trying really hard to recreate in our new space at the Kalayatane in Narayanpita. And unfortunately, my grandfather has never been to the Kalayatane.
Thaji, now when they were living there, your grandparents like Vajira and Chitrasena were married, right?
Yeah, so actually, my grandmother was forced to start dancing. Like my great grandmother, her mother, had forced her to dance, and she had, kind of. So my grandmother is from Kalutara. So my great grandmother had said, "Okay, now you go to Colombo, you stay at Chitrasena's house, and you learn to dance."
Why
So
would that's such an untraditional thing to say, Thaji? It's opposite, right? That normally Sri Lankan or Sinhala mothers would say.
I know exactly. So my great grandmother was this, very open minded. I really don't know what she was thinking, but she just wanted her daughter to dance because she saw some potential in my grandmother that my grandmother didn't even see. So my grandmother used to say, she used to be like this very tomboy, want to play netball with her brothers, and she never kind of saw herself doing this very graceful dance form. So, but once she was sent to Colombo, she was sent with her sister, her elder sister, who was studying at medical college. So they stayed at Sia's place in Kolpiti and went to study. But my grandmother was studying at Methodist College for some time, and then she stopped going to school, and she then started dancing 24/7. But I think that's when my grandfather kind of realized that, okay, she's kind of born to dance and continue the dance form, and
Let me
that's
have
when,
a picture of her, Thaji, during
yes.
her young days.
Uh,
They were one of the most handsome couples I have seen, apart from the skill.
That's true. So this is my grandmother in the 1960s performing one of her solos. Yeah, this is like a very iconic picture of her.
Really
And
stunning.
yeah, I think, yeah, this is them. This
That's the
is
most
actually,
famous one, I think, that
yeah,
of this couple.
yeah. This is considered like their wedding picture, actually.
Right.
So,
Saji, so your grandmother, I mean, from a feminist perspective, had children and still maintained her, figure and the dancing ability and everything, right? And
yeah,
I think in the
so
process of all this, she's also having kids.
yeah, well, she had a great support system, I have to say. She constantly tells us, what is this? You all are only dancing. What about, how will this continue into the next generation? Aren't you all going to have children? I'm like, you had a support system. You had your mother, your sisters, and then Sia's sister also was living with them, who was married. And so they kind of ran the house and they looked after the children. And so you should actually hear my aunts talking about my grandparents. They're like, they were never there. We grew up
Exactly.
here.
That's kind of the nuclear family. I think it's pretty modern because in villages even,
Yeah.
the fact that the parents have to look after their kids, I think is pretty recent in our
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's such an amazing, Taji, I'm just thinking, did no one write this down?
Sorry.
Did no one write this down, that era, that time where
Actually, there is a book on my grandfather that was done for his, like, to celebrate his 50 years of dance on stage. But they only printed like very few copies
I'm just
during.
thinking only if people like Mahagama Sekar also lived in that house, we would have There was no writer in
So
early.
there's no Sinhala documentation of it.
Uh,
There is in English.
even English or Tamil or Sinhala, I wish a writer had been included in that group
That's true.
because
Actually, right as in Ravilal Vimaladharma.
yeah,
Yeah, he Yashoda Vimaladharma's father. So he was also very close to my grandfather, and during those early days, he is the one who had taken the notations of all the music that was composed. So he used to write everything down, and then he had helped with box plans and for shows, and also like writing receipts that during classes. So like had really been very close to my grandfather during that early time. So
yeah, no, I was absolutely. I mean, Ravi, we hardly appreciate how much he did. Ravilal Vimaladharma and fostering a love of Hindi music and all that in Sri Lanka. I was
mm,
also wishing for someone like imagine putting Martin Vikramasinghe or Mahagamasekar into
yeah,
that
in that.
group because they would have had a novel. And I'm like just thinking, imagine the things that they could have said about this very core group of who we consider the founder artist of all our traditions.
Mm,
Somabandhu as a painter, costume designer, then Chitrasena as the dancer, Amaradev as the musician.
yes.
They are the giants, they are the
Mm,
co-founders.
yeah.
Okay, so then the children grew up as they could within that context, right? And they naturally took to dance. Upek and them are like now the
Yeah, so
most
my father was also kind of forced to dance by my grandmother, but he did dance in his early
so
days.
those who got married to them also had to dance.
Yeah, yeah. So when my mother came to learn dance, that's how he met my father. So that's but my father was more into sports, and he played cricket at Raghavar Royal, and
So going back again, how many children did they have and who were they?
six children. So my aunt Upeka is the eldest, then Anjalika, and then Anudatta, who's my father,
Right,
is the youngest.
right.
So he was more into sports, and so actually my grandfather never forced him to dance. He used to actually apparently scold my grandmother, saying, don't do this. Let him do what he wants. And apparently he had busted his back while trying to like do some dancing, and so my grandmother got really like she got like scolded at by my grandfather. So he was, just because that was his only son, he didn't really force him to learn the dance. Even with us it was the same. None of us were forced to do it. We just wanted to do it, and we love to do it, and that's why we do it. So but Upeka and Anjali,
Was he
yeah.
ever a performer like your answer? Was Anudatta ever a
Yes,
stage
yes, he did.
performer as
He
well?
did perform. Yes.
Okay.
So he has performed in, I think, Kinkini Kovalamava as like a background like dancer, and he studied in London. So during that time, my grandmother's sister was in London, and when she used to do shows in London with her students, my father used to play the drum. He was able to play the Candian drum, so he used to play the drum for their shows, and so
Okay. Also, I wanted to ask you, the Kinkini Kolama and Karadia,
Canadian, yeah.
they were narrations, so they were stories. Who came up with those stories, Thaji?
So Kinkini Kolama was a kind of like real life story that was tweaked a bit to suit whatever the stage. And then Karadia was a story that my grandfather again came up with when he used to travel by train to Matara to teach class. He used to travel by train, and he used to see these fishermen drawing nets, and that's how he was inspired to create the story of Karadia. And then Naladamayanti was done after he came back from India, and his Indian influence. It's a story from the Mahabharata.
Exactly. That was already a ready-made story, but the
Yes.
others were very, Sri
Yeah.
Lankan
Yeah.
context. Right. Thaji, do you have any pictures of those productions?
Not sure if I have any pictures of those, but let me see. Can yeah, I don't have pictures of that, but
Actually,
I
another
have.
related question. Now I know you, the Chitrasena's descendants continued his teaching, and you still do that. Is it almost impossible to stage again those classics like Nala Damayanti or Kinkini Kolam or Karadi?
The thing is, I think some of it is possible, and we actually even, something like Kinkini Kolama is very possible to do with some of it. Just depends on the people who are available at this time. So right now, something like Karadiya is very difficult to create with the people who are in the group right now. So like again, Sia's role is the most difficult one to replace. So, in Kinkini Kolama, we did do it after Sia passed away, and I think Ravi Mama did Sia's role in that. So, those things we have done, but and also Nalada Mayanti has been done without Sia in the mix. But something like Karadiya has, like that Mandadirala's character has never been done by anyone else, and it was a very special role for my grandfather, and he played that role till the very end of his career. So to find someone to replace that is very difficult and has been very difficult also. It just depends on, like, you don't want to just kind of recreate just for the sake of doing it, right? So it has to have some kind of meaning. It has to be meaningful. And also it depends on the times we are living in, like right now, to be recreating something. Yeah, it.
Right now, Thaji, we are wondering about, even kids. Right now
Yeah.
is not possible, but
So it
hopefully,
just it
yeah.
has to also be relevant with the time.
Exactly, and you do go into new productions of, like,
Yes.
I came and I saw Kumi Katava maybe about 5 years back or 6 years back. I was totally impressed with the fact, as you said, you worked with what you had, and that cast contained small children as well.
Yes.
But the professionalism, Thaji, I don't think anything is lost from the past. The
Yes.
utter professionalism of the production was
Mhm.
mind blowing, right? In costume, in lighting, in the dance, even they were so, they knew what they were doing technically. It wasn't just a, let's, shake this and
Movie
shake this.
Katava was, I think, one of the biggest productions we did after, my grandparents kind of retired, and I don't think my grandfather was around when we produced it, but
Yeah.
it was done, directed by my aunt Angelika and Heshiaki together. So,
Yeah, this is very small. I can't
small
get,
picture.
I
Yeah,
can get a bigger one.
yeah,
But Haji, like, these are kids, right? But look at their eagerness, look at their, the costumes. I mean, on stage, this was stunning. And let me see whether I can
it was
get.
like very magical, like this, like spectacle kind of. Even for us, it was a new experience, and we had to stitch down for all the costumes were done in house, so like
And
my
right, who did the
grandmother.
costumes, Haji?
It was designed by one of our students, Mahesh Umagilia, but and like Heshiaki together, and the costumes were like stitched by different people. So like some of the leotards and stuff, we had to get it stitched from outside. But my grandmother stitched a lot of the ant backsides were stitched by my grandmother.
I wish I could get a picture, but it's very difficult sometimes to download.
Yeah,
And
I just have one picture of,
yeah,
I think, the,
there's one of you, I think, available. Can you
yeah,
please see
yeah.
that you as
I'll, I'll,
and
I'll try to show
yes.
it to you. So,
The fascinating thought process. I mean, I have seen films that do this. What's the famous
yeah,
one? I can't
so,
remember, but I've first time I saw it in dance, and the vibrancy and the
yeah,
bustle.
so that was me. I was the villain in the first time that I played the villain, but it was so, I loved it. I loved this role.
It's
So
beautiful. The costumes are
angry
stunning.
mosquito. Yes.
Wow. Surprise. I mean, it was gorgeous. I wish Taji, but I can imagine the hard work that went to it. You know, how
Yeah, so
many?
there's like 60 students in the cast. So we actually reproduced it like 3 times. I think 2007, 2009, 2015. And now it's just a lot of work even to just reproduce it.
How long did you practice to put that up?
The before the premiere of it in 2007, we practiced for 5 years.
That's the thing. And that, that kind of I don't know, that kind of uh, dedication for one show, I don't think that's very common here. I
Yeah.
honestly don't.
It's not. I mean, the thing is also that students only come once a week. So once a week, we used to do rehearsals, and then creating a new production it's just a lot of like trial and error, and so that cast kind of changed twice over, because by the time the 5 years had gone, the original cast had grown up. So we had to change the main ant family again, and so I wasn't the original mosquito. There was someone else. Then she had to leave for some reason, so then I had to fill in that character. So everything.
Is there anything in movement that you can show us, Taji, of a recent dance form? I'd love to
Yeah, so actually, there's a small clip from some of our recent work, which is Heshma's choreography, and she's talking about her work and why she does what she does and
give
how
us a
she.
little bit of introduction about Heshma, Taji, before we play that.
Yeah, so Heshma is the artistic director of the Chitrasena dance company, and
Whose daughter?
she's Anjalika's daughter, my
Right.
yeah, aunt's daughter. So
Aunt, yeah.
they're cousins, yeah.
The second
Daughter, yeah.
second daughter's
Daughter's
daughter.
daughter, yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
then study, Taji, before you play that.
yeah. So she actually her initial education was here, and then she went to the US. She did a theater arts degree in California at Berkeley University,
And Berkeley is one of the leading institutions of art, no? Berkeley School of Music.
that's Berkeley School of Music.
This is what?
This is Berkeley, California. This is
I see. I don't quite know of it,
yeah.
but it's
Boston
equally
is
good.
the other school, yeah.
Right. And this is for dance, particularly?
Yeah, this is the theater arts, yeah. But I think Berkeley has other stuff as well. She followed their theater arts degree, yeah.
For a degree, okay.
Yeah, and then she lived in the US for actually like 10 years. She got married there, and then she came back once my grandfather actually passed away. Just before she moved back to Sri Lanka with her whole family, and yeah, she took on kind of the reins of the school, and since then she's been kind of heading the operations and everything. She's not just a choreographer. She does looks into everything, like the administrative side, the whatever account side, creating the dance, designing the costume. So again, she's like a full package.
And I always, when I listen to stories like that, Taji, in a context where everybody who can do something is trying to leave and are actually leaving, I
Yeah.
always say, thank God for those who come back.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, this wouldn't have existed, Taji. You may not have existed.
Mm.
So we don't realize when good people leave, they're actually taking something away from the country that they could have helped. I mean, I see the point every time I have people leaving, Taji. They give reasons. I have students who should have been, the next
Exactly.
iconic teachers, they are leaving, and they would say for our kids, they always have a reason. I mean,
Mm.
you can't blame them. I mean, at what we have become, but it breaks my heart because Heshma came back, and her return made a difference to the country.
Yeah,
And
indeed.
that's,
Because otherwise, we wouldn't know actually like where the Chitrasena legacy would even be going,
exactly,
what kind of
exactly.
direction.
So I always say, thank God for people like that. I'm sure she would have been more comfortable in
Yes, indeed.
India,
She
right?
would.
Here she's beating the drum in road protest. Okay, so for me, those are the heroes. And I know in the writing world, people like Amarakirti could have said they got job offers and they said stay. They had to come back. So that kind of passion, that kind of drive, for me, those are the real heroes of any country. So I'll just put that out here
Indeed.
because Heshma is such a person, and she also is. She trains you, and she choreographs your
Yes,
dance.
I have to say, like, the her choreography is kind of the reason that I am the dancer I am today, because her, like, it's very different to my grandmother's choreography. My grandmother's, I've done both, because I perform my aunt's pieces as well that have been choreographed by my grandmother, which are they're very simple and very, like, the essence of the Candian dance is very, it's in it. But with Heishiaki's choreography, there's a lot of thinking in it and a lot of emotion, and it's very challenging, and it just and I love that. So it
I
just makes
remember,
you,
Taji, what you did for Pradeep's music,
yes,
Rebirth.
yes,
You danced, and it was Heshma's choreography, and it
yes,
was such a fun, and you got the spirit of the music.
yes.
The Rebirth.
And we performed that, I think, so many times, and even the start of Kumikata.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah,
did. Yes.
yes, we
All right.
did.
Shall we see? And this has
Yes,
Heshma's
the video.
voiceover, right?
Yes, she's talking. So
Okay.
At first, I did what was necessary to keep the school and company going. As I started experimenting more and finding my own style as a creative director and choreographer, I drew from many sources of inspiration that went back to our roots but reinterpreted them in my own way. For example, I created a piece called Panteru Mata, which was inspired by a Candian ritual, the Subisi Vivaranaya. I used it as a symbol for storytelling and for current social commentary. Sources of inspiration can be from anywhere, but I'm always mindful of how I use them within the traditional language, always mindful of what has come before.
Taji, that's you dancing, right? Believe it. So, Taji, one thing that struck me when I watched it is the beauty of the colors that you use, the warmth, the orangeness, and the utter sheer elegance of it. So, I deeply respect Keshma. Is there a picture that we can show the audience of her?
yes, I do have. So actually, even so, that's Eshma, and her all her choreography. What we do today is, I think, because we're again talking about resistance. It's through resistance to what is happening with the dance now. So in terms of the dance and where it has gone now, so during Sia's time we spoke about how he did it in resistance for, like, this, what had come with the colonial rule and all that, and now it's more about what is happening with the dance now, and these reality shows that have come in and kind of, in one sense, kind of vulgarize the form as well. So to an extent that you can't really, kind of, even for me, I'm like, what are these forms that they're dancing, because because people feel it's not cool, they try to infuse it with a little bit of Bollywood, a little bit of Indian classical. So it has become something very alien, like you can't figure out what it is. So
I was actually, Thaji, going to get to this point where I say, funnily, now your resistance is against people who think they are being resistant to tradition and getting other forms in. You know,
yeah,
it's a weird, twist of the people who think they are resisting tradition are getting different forms in. And again, we need to be careful that no more can we talk about in the hierarchies of a pure tradition and a different tradition. But within the context of maybe seriousness to art, I can legitimately ask this question because now the world is moving towards amalgamation,
yeah.
right? And the recently I saw quite an impressive one where Bharatanatyam was combined with hip hop. I think it's all over the
I see
that,
too.
right? And Chitrasena Vajira Kalayatanya has been one that completely resisted any kind of different tradition coming into
Yeah,
this.
I think the thing is that kind of entertainment is necessary in one sense, and it's out there, yes, but that's not what I want to do. You know, that's
Perfect. Okay, so that's a personal stance, but I will tell you this. And again, I think I'm making a judgment which may not be fair, may not be accepted as what should be said as politically correct at this time. But I have gone abroad, Thaji, and seen acts put on under the name of Sri Lankan dance, and I have known that no, that is not Sri Lankan dance, clearly. And I felt embarrassed being there because what has been portrayed was more, a celebration of the woman's body, which I have no problem about, right? But it wasn't dance. It wasn't dance the way I know what Sri Lankan dance is. So when I see women being made to put on, movements under the title of Sri Lankan or Sinhala dance, I also have got irritated because I know there's a different genre. It belongs in perfectly okay in the entertainment world,
yeah,
but don't go representing us internationally under that banner when it's not. So
exactly.
again, a judgment may be fair, maybe not. There are places into which it belongs, and there are places into which it doesn't belong. And I always say, what a pity we do have the original form. And I don't think Chitrasena Kalayatan is easy to deal with, Kaji. And that is one of the reasons that you
And
will
you
not
know, because
go,
you worked with us.
yes. And no, because you will put down rules which other troops won't put down. So
And I think
therefore,
here, especially, we have to put down the rules.
I totally get it.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
Kaji, I'm also married to a musician. So I know how, especially internationally, people can treat others with such disrespect that serious artists say no. And I totally get that. But what happens then is that those who represent the nation might be those who might not put such stringent rules
Exactly.
or might go for
Because
a
they just
better
don't
fix.
want to deal with all this, drama,
And it could
putting
even
up a
be
stage and theatre
exactly,
style seating and
yeah. And also it could be just simple as cost. They might do it for a cheaper fee. It is
exactly.
in a way that it's sad in a way, Taji. Maybe everyone doesn't have the economic strength to take a stand, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? Pradeep has been incredibly lucky because he already has a job. So he
Yes.
doesn't have to depend on anything, and you all are technically not that financially bad. But there might be others who might say okay to anything.
Yes.
And they can therefore easily be taken in. And when you see on international stage something called Sri Lankan dance, and you know in your heart that is not it,
No.
and you actually feel embarrassed, right? But that's how the world rolls, and no one will know the better.
So
So
that's why, in one sense, Heshaki's choreography is like we always go back to our roots, whereas everybody is going looking towards the
right,
west, and all that we go back to our roots and try to draw from our roots. So
right.
basically, in resistance to what is being shown out there, we're doing it in reverse. So
you're doing it in reverse. That's a weird part. I was trying to say, how do I simply term it? There wasn't a simple way. Your resistance is actually resisting those who resist tradition. So, and but let's also admit there are spaces for that kind of thing as well. Maybe as entertainment and maybe on social media, to make an impact. But there is also space for this. All I ask is when somebody asks for traditional Sri Lankan dance to come, let's at least do the little thing and get the more traditional ones. Because there's so many which are not.
yeah.
And it's such an
So
amalgamation.
even like what we do is not really very traditional. It has been changed, right?
Exactly.
It has evolved when it came onto the stage, and it will continue to evolve. But how it is changed and how we kind of innovate within it is, you have to be very careful when you're working with like a 2,000, 3,500-year-old dance form. So
Exactly. And I think, Thaji, the sad thing is that the generation that is coming now might not know what the traditional dance is even. They might take this kind of posing in different seductive poses as being real Sri Lankan dance. See, that's where knowledge comes in. Again, it's a judgment for which I do apologize. That has a space and a time for it, right? But the young people engaging in it might not even know that this is not the traditional form.
Yes.
Right? And you guys have shown how attractive traditional forms can be within the, within kind of a pure thing. But so that judgment, I think I'll risk making. Everything has a time and a place. There is a place and an entertainment industry to which this new kind of dance belongs. But I'm glad at least one group, and maybe Ravi also, and
Yes,
Ravi Bandhu's group, and maybe your group. Yeah, there might be others I don't know about, for which I apologize. These are the two I know that stick very closely to tradition and try to propagate that. Heshma, before we leave this conversation, can we show the picture of those sisters, Thaji? I was just thinking, the women who take this forward,
the
I
family.
love the group, and seriously.
Yeah.
You,
So I'll just.
even your sister did dance, no?
Yes. She was also a dancer.
Both your aunts were dancers, Upeka being the most famous one
Yes,
among
I
them.
actually have a picture of the three siblings, my two aunts and my father, which is a very recent picture. I'll
Right.
just show that first, and
Please do. So these are the Chitrasena Vajira children, right?
yes, the three children.
Okay.
So
Upeka is perhaps the most famous among them.
yes,
And yes, and your father doesn't dance anymore?
no, he doesn't.
And what does Anjalika do?
She also was a dancer, and but she's more a choreographer. She actually she loves working with children. So she is the one who has created our children's program that called Punchipada that we do at the Kalayatanaya. And also she's a choreographer, and she's the one who created Kubi Katava.
Excellent. So, and Heshma is whose child?
Anjalika's, yeah, Anjalika.
Right. And your Anudatta's child.
Son's daughter.
Right. I'm so confused with your, the
I know everybody.
sheer networking here.
Yeah, so if someone's like, your Upeka's daughter, I say yes, I'm Upeka's daughter.
Okay, so do you have the second generation picture simultaneously?
Yes, I have a picture of the whole family as well. So show you, this is, I think, just like.
And did he also marry artist, Thaji? The first siblings?
Not really. No, none of them really married artists. Like my aunt is my aunt Upeka is married to Cedric, who is he was
a curator, no? Like a curator for artifacts and all that.
No, he worked for SOS Children's Villagers for a very long time. He was the national director here in Sri Lanka, and now he's retired and
for some reason I remember him being in charge of a gallery of artifacts. Heritage gallery or something. Maybe I got it wrong, but I thought he was interested in that kind of thing as well. Yeah, I got it wrong. Okay.
And then my aunt Anjalika is actually married to a sportsman. Suresh Melwani. Yeah,
Right.
he was into sports and yeah. So
And your
and
mother?
my mother actually she's actually from so her background is quite vivid. She's from her mother is Rupa Kumaratunga. They're from the Kumaratunga side, and so
Hmm.
she's Vijay Kumaratunga's niece, and so she has that kind of background. And then, but she was always into like art, so she learned to sing under Nanda Malini, and then
Right.
she came and joined the Chitrasena school to learn dancing. So she was always into the arts, but she also did like a 9 to 5 job at the same time.
Okay.
So yeah, while
Honestly, I
dancing.
didn't know the Vijay Kumaratunga link to you. Now I do. Okay.
That I don't think many know that.
Many
Now
would
they
not.
do.
Now they would, Thaji. Yes. So you inherit quite a lot of art. No? Yes.
And okay, so I'll show you a picture of the whole family there.
That's such
So
a gorgeous picture, Thaji, and such power in those women. So
yeah,
this is Anjalika,
yeah. I
and
think
you take,
my
and this
darling
is you.
corner
The red
in
sari
the
is you.
middle. The pink, yeah, that is me.
All right. And
Then
this is your
it's my
sister.
sister. Yeah, right. In the middle is my sister. Then
Yeah.
Upeka and then Heshma.
So
So
if you want a power woman picture, I would probably pick this.
so
Right.
I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, none of the males in the family took up dance. So after my grandfather, so obviously my father didn't become a dancer, and then actually my aunt Angelika has 2 sons, but they also never took up dancing. So they were also into sports and so on, but it was mainly the females in the family who actually took up the art form and wanted to kind of continue it. So the males in the family actually support the females to be able to, when you're doing when you're pursuing an art form, it's very difficult. So the males actually did the 9 to 5 job to be able to support the females to continue the
It's a
legacy.
24/7 job.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And also it's heartening to know, how closely knit you as an extended family, Taji. I've seen the way this team works,
Yes.
right? And it's very inspiring. And I'm hoping there might be others which we don't know, less public, less celebrated figures of where you help each other go forward. And I just add that also into this. Okay, right. So let's go back to where we stopped, and we had stopped by talking about the fact that your grandfather had to leave the premises. That was kind of the birth of all the iconic Sri Lankan artists. Then what happened to the school, Taji? What
Yeah,
was
so it
the
was the building was demolished, and this EPA Fernando's house, and then they had to move out from that house, and my grandfather moved to Kadavata.
yeah.
He found a place in Kadavata, like this huge like coconut kind estate kind of thing with a house in the middle, and he actually lived there alone, and my grandmother shifted to our place in Navala. So my grandmother was living with us, and my grandfather
Now,
was.
when you say our place, by the time the house had to be vacated, y'all were born?
I wasn't born. My sister like was just born.
I
So in
see.
1982, yeah, they vacated the house and they went straight to Navala. Navala is where my great grandmother lives. So
Okay.
her house. So they moved there. My grandmother moved there, and my grandfather moved to Kadavata. So he started classes there,
Hmm.
and my grandmother was doing classes in Navala, and then he would come to Colombo because they started renting halls like at GFS. They rented Kalale, all these places, and they still continued the school in that way. My grandfather says like gypsies, they were going from one place to another, renting halls. So it was very frustrating for him, I think. So in one sense, he kind of lost that spirit and that soul to kind of continue to work. And from there, my grandmother is the one who kind of led the whole show. So she was like doing all these productions.
Actually, in the process, they also traveled abroad quite often, right?
Yes, yes.
Representing Sri Lanka.
Very much, yeah.
Between
So
this,
I think the first tour was in 1957. My father was only 3 months old, and my grandmother said she was still lactating, and they had to do what, some 3 month tour of Europe or something. And she said that she used to get milk when she used to dance. So because my father was only 3 months, and she had to leave him with her mother and go. So they were like that. So that was their first tour, and then there were so many other tours, that like some 42 tours to so many countries, different countries. I think they had only not toured the US. My aunt is the one, when she started leading the group, she led the group and they traveled to the US. But my
do you have a picture of Upeka that we can show? Because then she became the lead dance of this troupe, and
Yes.
second
So
generation.
after my grandmother, it was my aunt who was the principal dancer of the company, and yeah, I have a picture of her. Yeah. So that's her. Yeah, picture by Lakshman Nadaraja. So
An amazing picture and an
yeah,
amazing,
very iconic
and
picture.
very iconic. And she also traveled around the world, right?
Yes, yes, very much. So she led the group to many places around the world, and I have actually toured with her. So even like my first tour when I was like just 12 years old was with her to France, in Paris. This place called Theatre du Soleil, which is a very iconic place for dramas and theatre and all that. And their director Ariane Munchkin had invited my aunt to come and perform there. So and it was a very different kind of show, because Ariane wanted us to kind of, there was a acting section in it at the beginning, where she wanted us to show how the students come to the guru and how they learn. So we had to come with our umbrellas like in the rain, and then my aunt would come, and then I would start learning from her. And so there was this like kind of village scene that we had to act out at the beginning of the performance. And then after that, my aunt changed into costume and did her solo pieces and stuff. So it was very interesting, and it was a nice experience for me at the age of 12 to be a part of that kind of show, and go and see that place, because it's that place, all the actors, the costume designers, the seamstress, everybody kind of lives in that space. So it was kind of like another version of that Palpiti house. And
House, no?
yeah,
Thaji,
which
at 12, you were happily allowed to go out like that? School was an issue?
I don't think anyone had a choice even at that age. I was like, this is what I want to do. And from school, yeah, of course, from school I had to get permission. But I think they knew that, this child, just like let her go, it's okay.
Kind of a lost case in that.
Lost case, she won't be studying anyway. So just let her go and do what she likes.
So curiously, like, you didn't do a degree, Thaji, you did?
No,
Or
I
what?
didn't.
And you don't regret it because you chose this way
Yeah,
and
I don't actually. I wanted to study further in the dance, but I didn't want to do it here. I wasn't necessarily interested in going to university here to learn dance. Like I feel like I have learned much more by being at the Chitrasena
outside.
school and
Okay.
touring with them and performing with them. So and teaching with them, I think I've learned much more than some of the graduates have at the university here. Because we have a lot of graduates who come to our school to learn. We have this scholarship program, and when I talk to them, I always wonder, like, why do they chosen to go to university here to learn dance? Sometimes because to become a performer, sometimes what their teaching is not really in it's not very
That conversation is between, the practically doing art and then learning about it. So
Exactly.
there's a difference there.
So,
Thaji, so are plans for a degree still on the table, or it's like, no, I just do
no,
this.
so
It's
I
better
never
than
got
anyone.
the opportunity or the time to actually go abroad and just like go for 2 3 years, because there were so many things happening here that I just didn't want to, miss whatever was happening. I wanted to be a part of all the performances. I didn't want to miss that. So and whatever was happening at the school. So I never really explored that option. So
And you're
but
the best example to show us that I keep saying this. You don't need a degree to be good at what you are. And sometimes people with degrees do nothing. So even though I'm in the campus field, Thaji, I open to say this. It's not about the degree. It's about what you can do and how much
I know. I mean,
education is
dance and
out there.
what we do is it's a practical subject, no. So actually, when I was doing my O levels, we didn't have practicals for dancing. It was very strange for me because they had taken out the practicals of it, and there was only theory. And I was like thinking, dance is a practical subject. It just makes no sense. So things like that, and things I heard about university, how they teach, I wasn't like interested in applying here, and then I didn't get the opportunity or time to go abroad. So yeah, I never really crossed my mind. But I think sometimes it's nice to just go out there and be out there for some time. That experience is nice. So I actually got that opportunity when we worked with Nityagram, this dance ensemble in India. We did a collaboration with them. So then I got the opportunity the group got an opportunity to tour with them. So like for 3 4 months, I was out, kind of sometimes on my own. So like just being away from family and your comfort zone is also quite nice. You kind of grow as a human being and, artist, everything. So that experience was kind of a very life-changing experience for me, I have to say.
Haji, I'm going to go back into the residence issue. For a group like you, who were the leading group representing Sri Lanka internationally, did the government not think it worth enough to step in and provide space for the leading artistic dance company of the country at that time?
Yeah, I don't know. The thing is, my grandfather, yes, he did perform like when they were the only kind of prominent dance company in Sri Lanka. They were invited to perform everywhere. Like even when there were distinguished guests who arrived, whichever government it was, my grandfather was never biased towards any kind of government. He was never involved in any of those things. He never asked for help from any of them, right? So but if there was a distinguished audience, the Chitrasena group would be invited to perform, and that continued. But it was much later during President Chandrika Bandanayak Kumartunga's time that she was also an old student of my grandfather. So I think she kind of gifted this land that we are at in Narahempita. She gifted it to my grandfather, but unfortunately we couldn't find the funds to actually build something there until my grandfather's demise. And it's only my grandfather passed away in 2005. We were only able to build like this very simple hall in that space to teach class, and we originally moved in there in 2007. So we tried to find funding from like private like patrons and private organizations, and we did like fundraisers, and so that's how we kind of built the school there. And now recently we have built Mr. Anjalendran, the architect, he built a Guru Gedara, or the home for a guru. So like in the olden days, this Guru Shishya Parampara system, where you kind of live with your teacher and you serve your teacher in order to learn your art form. So we want to
It's a
kind
very
of
Indian tradition. No, you
yes,
don't learn. For example, music, you don't learn in a university. You
exactly.
learn outside and you go and serve, even as a slave. you know, but the gift you get in return is not a salary but a skill.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah, so I think even in India, they like initially you don't learn dance or music. You just learn to, like, you're sweeping the garden, you're massaging your teacher's feet, and like that. And then you kind of slowly, if the teacher feels that you're worthy of learning, then he or she will start teaching you. So we not that we want to go to that extent, but we kind of felt the need for the gurus to be living in that space more than anything, because even more than the students, also to have the presence of the gurus in that space. So my aunt and my grandmother shifted into the Guru Gedara like just a few months back. So that was quite nice that we were able to achieve that, at least during my grandmother's uh, life. So actually, again, Heshiak is the one who initiated that and really worked towards getting the Guru Gedara completed
For the
before.
Sinhala one, Thaji, let's have some photographs also. I would love to see Anjan's
Yes,
architecture. Apart
definitely.
from everything, also I was thinking your resistance is also resisting some changes that we consider inevitable in the modern world, right? I mean, but to have the concept of Guru Gedra, that is to go against all neoliberal currents.
Yeah, so it's a
With all of
modern day Guru Gedara, where there are not students living there, but
right,
the teachers are there.
right, but then the presence of the teacher and the school is just there as well, right?
Very important.
So
Yeah.
the school will always have a teacher in that space.
Yes.
That's a
Yes.
different thing. So
Mm.
Taji, I will now lead towards the end of my program by asking you about resistance in the political sense. Right? I've seen you, Heshma, Upeka, all of them use dance as protest in the current crisis we are having in Sri Lanka. Why did you and your family feel the need to, what, because I know Chitrasena tried to be a political, why did you feel the need that now we should? Ravi was also there. And I asked Ravi Iyer the same question, why the need to do this now at a political level?
I think now is the most important, and if we don't, I feel, step out there and be vocal. Yeah, we don't talk. So we thought using our art form to as a protest is the best way we can express how we feel. So because none of us are great at talking and expressing ourselves, so we speak through the dance. So I think for me it was again, like, we have never been politically involved in anything, or like from my grandfather's time. So to suddenly be like, honestly, to suddenly be very vocal and come out in resistance was like I had to actually talk to myself. Like, it was it I had to be like, okay, I have to do this, like, it's for my country. And so also so Heshiaki was like definitely very adamant on doing this. And so and I really wanted to do it, but there was this feeling of like, how do I do this, how like, I in a space like that, how do I perform, how am I going to be seen, like, because we perform in theater spaces, and it's very different, right? So to be coming and performing in on like grass, and then like people around you with camera phones, so for me it was like, okay, I have to kind of quickly adapt to this setting. And in one sense it was that, and also like, obviously I was worried about my feet, and those kind of things also come to my head. I'm like, I don't want to be trampling a stone, but not necessarily like I wanted to do it, but I was more worried about like other things of how this would be seen, or because it's a very informal setting, and
I mean, there
so
are people inches away from you, me included, taking photographs, and you could have trampled any one of the people
I know.
right at your feet. But
So it was
you seemed as if that world didn't exist, Taji. Honestly, I saw you act. when you dance there, we did not exist. You dance for something else, and that was very powerfully captured. So
Yeah, and
now,
I think that's what I at the end I thought like, okay, I want to express how I feel through my dance, and if I'm not able to express what I feel through my dance, then there's no point in me dancing also, right? So we have to use our art form, intelligently, at the correct times, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm just going to forget about everyone who's out there and what they're thinking or how I'm being seen, and I'm just going to perform. So that's what I did. So even the sound, like, there were no proper mics and stuff, so the sound was it was a bit difficult for me to hear, and it wasn't projecting. But I was like, it's fine, it's okay, just like forget that and just dance and just show the world and show the people, that we are taking a stand, and we this is what we want. And so I think this is exactly the time that needs to be done. And I think using art to show resistance, I think there's no better way to do it. Like, everyone can talk and talk and talk, but I think doing it through art is much more, the message comes out stronger, you can emotionally connect with people. But of course, I I don't know how, like, a politician would see it or take it or understand
I
it.
honestly don't think they see it, Taji. I don't think they see. So let's not get there. Should I, the fact that this particular struggle is so different from our historical ones, particularly because of the link it has to aesthetics and art as opposed to violence, right? Every
Exactly.
time violence came, it wasn't that they started it. And even, yesterday people were, taken and arrested. So we are in a very odd, unforeseen part of the history that this country is going through. Let's hope that it remains aesthetic, that it remains a fight against something that almost all artists, serious artists, took a stand against. I mean, there were dramatists, there were writers, there were musicians, it's not in the past tense, unfortunately. There are like artists who are standing up now. As you say, what impact it will have, or whether this is considered absolutely of no importance, which I think is the case by those who want, we want to hear, we want us heard by. They may not consider this like anything of seriousness.
Yeah.
But I think the world will, Taji. This is where they make a mistake. The world sees it, the world hears it. Not that the world is particularly fair either. I mean, there are, so many injustices happening, but it's taking off a stand. Maybe it might be something historic, worldwide, but they hear, they listen, and maybe, because we all love our country, we are doing it for the state. And if the
Yes.
politicians, as they say they do, love the country, maybe things will change one day. So let's live in hope. For me
Yes.
personally, people like you are one of the brightest hopes we have, because our generation technically failed a whole lot of people, including your generation, right? So, but if the GGG is carried on the shoulders of young people, maybe they'll make it better. Maybe we'll have a chance of, creating a world that we think Sri Lanka should be. Where, there's fairness, there's justice, there is love of life and art and love. There's so much we have in the
Yes.
Sinhala dance, in the Tamil music, Sinhala music, so much that we have. And then there's a Muslim community which have their own forms of art which we don't even know about, right?
Yes.
So let's hope for a better future, Taji, and let me thank you, for being a beacon of that hope that I have personally. And, B, in a small way, for coming today, for speaking about, what you do, why you do it, and your history. And we will be repeating this in Sinhala, because on over and above everything else, I'm also trying to make people have access to English in Sri Lanka as well. Let me thank you, Taji, and stop for the moment. And all I can wish you is to keep being the person you are, so that we will have some light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, Taji.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Bye bye.